Welcome everyone in the room and over at Zoom to this Coaching and Science Initiative seminar on the topic of navigating rejection in academia. Let's see. Unfortunately, sometime or another, we will all be here. We will all get rejected in some way or another. So where do we encounter rejection in academia in particular? Well, if you are an author or a co-author on an article, or sooner or later you will enter the peer review process, and you have worked a long time and put in a lot of effort in your research and manuscript, hoping that it will be accepted for publication, and perhaps worried as well that it will be rejected. And countless jokes have been made about by academics about that second or third reviewer who is never ever satisfied no matter what you do. So perhaps you have been part of writing a grant to fund your own research or the salary, and you're looking forward to new scientific adventures, or stressing out about having enough funding to retain your own employees. And here rejection can range from mere disappointment to having to make life-altering decisions. Maybe you're interested in working in a new place, perhaps in another research group, or going out to industry, working as a staff scientist or a technician somewhere. Sometimes the competition can be fierce for the available positions. Or maybe you're applying to or competing for some type of award to improve your chances in advancing your career. Or maybe you want to travel to a conference and present your research. And many times you need to compete with lots of other applicants to be accepted with a poster or even with a talk. So there are many, so these are just some like common examples where we may encounter rejection, but rejection may also happen in social interactions with others. And as you can see, we are already working in an environment where there is, that we are constantly exposed to rejection in various ways. And this is one of the reasons why it is so important that everyone working in a team is automatically socially included and accepted, that we can create some type of psychological safety in this environment where I, as a human being, at least, is always accepted. Like my ideas and my work, of course, they can be accepted and sometimes rejected. That will happen to everyone. And it's good to feel happy when we get accepted and to celebrate that. But it is also healthy to actually feel sad, to not fool ourselves that we can in some way bypass this uncomfortable feeling that we get when we encounter reaction. And these things are normal. They are to be expected and to happen again and again. It's not going to be like this is the last one. Now I'm never ever going to be rejected again. But we can help ourselves and others to build a resilience around this by making sure that we, at least as human beings, as part of our teams, that we are always accepted. And one way of looking at how common rejection is in academia is to look at how common is acceptance. So here's a study from 2020. Looking at more than 2,000 journals, and here you look at the number at the journal acceptance rates, which is simply the number of accepted manuscripts divided by the number of received manuscripts in a journal, and then they found that it ranges quite a lot. But the average acceptance rate is somewhere around 32%. So this means that the other 68% did not get accepted for various reasons. Another way of looking at this is to compare the journal size, so the number of published article versus the number of accepted article. And overall, there was like a strong, there's like no strong relationship between the size of a journal and acceptance rate, but larger journal here in the plot tended to have a relatively lower acceptance rate, but it's still a huge spread. And you can also look at comparing a journaled field-weighted citation impact score. So here the global average of all journals within a field will be somewhere around 1 in this plot, and plot that against the acceptance rate. And one observation was then that extremely high impact journals tend to show relatively lower acceptance rate, but even then there is like a huge variation in the data. So the take-home message for this is that, for sure, there are some trends, but still there is a lot of variability when it comes to getting accepted or being rejected when it comes to publishing. So what mental tools do we then have at our disposals to deal with this much uncertainty in academia? Well, this leads us to the CSI's, what we CSI call the central dogma of coaching. And this is a model for increasing our awareness on various topics. So how aware am I of my thoughts, feelings, and actions in relationship to rejection? And with this, we can investigate. So when I think about rejection, what thoughts get activated within me? When I engage with these thoughts about rejection, what emotions that this produce in my body, like fear, shame, anxiety, perhaps. And when I experience these emotions, what additional thought patterns get activated on top of that? So how is my brain and my body experiencing a situation where rejection is included? Do I acknowledge, allow, and accept all of these emotions and thoughts that just automatically arises, or do I want to just push them away because it's a very uncomfortable experience? And here it is very important for our well-being and mental health that we deliberately and intentionally create this inner judgment-free space. So no matter what thoughts and feelings come up in whatever situation, we acknowledge, allow, and accept them for simply just existing. So it is when we take action then when we need to think about ethics and morals, but thoughts and emotion, they are always okay, whatever they may be. And by asking ourselves these types of questions, we can then explore how our own experience of our own brain's neural network and raise awareness around this. And this is particularly important when we face emotionally challenging situations. Here is an intuition pump called the phone call. And intuition pumps are thought experiments designed to generate something of an aha moment. So we'll see if this one works. So this is then the phone calls, and you pick up and someone says, "I never want to speak to you again." And if you look at the call ID, it's like just a random person. You don't know who it is. And like, okay, that was weird and like maybe a bit rude. But what if it's a loved one that does this? Then it's just awful. But note here, it is not the phone call, and it is not the words themselves. It is what we make this mean for us. It is how we interpret the situation. It's our thought and how we think that our thoughts about the future will impact us. And it is not always easy, but we have the capability to intentionally direct our thoughts and action. So in terms of rejection and journal publication, if we have an all or nothing perspective, then it's very then we can have a very be thrown between emotional extremes very easily. Like, oh, I'll never get published or finish my degree if we get rejected once. But if we instead tell ourselves a story about probabilities, then a rejected paper might simply mean that in this moment of time, I might have a slightly reduced leverage towards my next goal, but things changes. And it does not mean that now I will never reach my goal. So what would be common emotions and thoughts that come up when we get rejected in some way? Of course, disappointment, feeling let down, and especially after investing so much time and effort. Some frustration. Why does this happen? I did everything right. Or anger towards the reviewers, a committee, towards ourselves, or perhaps just the whole system. Sadness, especially if it feels like a personal failure. Anxiety, worrying about future opportunities. What does this mean for me going forward? Maybe imposter syndrome. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Shame, feeling exposed and not good enough, especially if it's in a competitive field. Hopelessness, what's the point? Maybe I should quit. Defensiveness, these reviewers, they just don't get it, or maybe indifference, whatever. I didn't want it anyway. Or comparing ourselves to others. Why did they get accepted and not me? So why do we experience rejection in this way? If we look at it from an evolutionary perspective, we have evolved by living in groups with other people because this has increased our chance of survival. If we would get rejected from the group, our survival was basically impossible. We were much more likely to just get eaten by some predator. And this means that our bodies and brains interpret rejection as a direct threat to our survival. So although we might know that a rejected paper is not a life-threatening situation, our systems and bodies have evolved for survival, and they might still provide us with similar thoughts and emotional experiences. So then it is helpful to take a compassionate approach and acknowledge this impact that a role that our biology has on us in terms of rejection. And one mental tool for this is the hand model of the brain, which is a simple way to explain the link between our biology and our emotional experience when it comes to rejection. So, for example, here we can we think about the hand where we have our brainstem represented by our wrist, which is then responsible for basic automatic functions such as breathing and keeping our heart pumping. And then we have the amygdala represented by our thumb, which is involved in our emotional response. And then wrapped around this, we have our prefrontal cortex, which helped us in complex decision making and emotional management. So when we experience intense emotions, then it's our emotional response sort of takes over. It temporarily lose access to this function of our brain where we are capable of making this much more advanced thinking. So when we get, it's good to then keep in mind that this is actually coupled to our biology, how we react. So there are also then things we can do to reduce this emotional response and calm down our nervous system. And one thing is, for example, box breathing. And this is simply by just slowing down our breath. Then we will also calm down our nervous system. And you can do this by just breathing in for 4 seconds. And then you pause for 4 seconds. And then you breathe out very slowly, 4 seconds again. And then you pause. So in this very structured and calming way, you can regulate by just regulating our breathing, we can get back to a more calm state where we are able to think clearly again. So what would a rejection survival guide for academics look like? So today I will share mine as a step-by-step action plan example. It's helpful to already have decided what to do when things get tough. It doesn't have to be complicated or only predefined and easy to follow. So the first one is just to pause and allow yourself to fully take in the situation, and then acknowledge and allow emotions that come up, and then just observe the state that we are in, that this reaction creates within our bodies. Sleep on it. It's often preferable to simply hit the reset button. And then it comes to radical acceptance, that this is where we accept the reality of the situation. Yes, this was not what I preferred, wanted, or agreed with, but it is the current situation. We want to avoid getting stuck in any type of denial of reality. And then one easy first action to take is always to just schedule a block of time in the week where, okay, I will sit down and deal with this at this point in time. And then also to remember to take action where you can impact. When we get rejected, there are many things that are just outside of our control. So it can be helpful to just identify some small things that we can do, like make a little action list or review the manuscript. We can submit it somewhere else, but something that we actually have control over. doing. And then we can remember our biology again, where we need a group of people for our survival. So to cope with rejection is very helpful to identify who are my people, having a predefined support system. Is it a friend, family, or colleagues that I know that when this happens, I will go to this person, I will have a coffee, it will feel better, for example. And also preventive measures. What can we do like regularly in our everyday life to practice this, like calming down of our nervous system? And that could be, for example, meditation or exercise and movement, or just like social interactions. Another tool to navigate rejection in academia is to building resilience by reframing rejections. And I will show a couple of examples of this, what I mean. But first, I just want to mention that when we judge or reject someone or something as wrong or lacking, it is usually because we have a need that is not being met. So instead of focusing on what is wrong with this or that, we can shift our focus toward what we need by asking questions such as, what needs of mine are not being met in this situation? I will attempt to do this a little bit here. So here we have a case of rejection, journal paper rejection. If we have a fixed mindset, we might say something like, oh, I'm just not good enough to publish in these journals. Maybe I'm not cut out for research. We can also approach it with a growth mindset. Well, reviewer number 3's comments, they were tough, but pointed out areas of improvement. And if I revise and submit to another journal, I learn from this experience. So if we look at the fixed mindset here, we see a judgment of not good enough. And if we look at the growth mindset, we see more focus towards a desire to improve and a need to be competent at what one does. Rejection, grant proposal rejection, a fixed mindset. This is pointless. Funding is simply impossible to get unless you're already famous. Or grant funding is competitive and even top scientists gets rejected. I'll use the feedback to strengthen my next proposal. Here in the fixed one, you can see that we have judged the situation as impossible, whereas in the growth mindset, we see more a need for growth, for perseverance, and a need for competence. Job application reaction. Well, if they didn't hire me, it means I'll never get whatever position it is that you want. Or this wasn't the right fit, but I gained experience in applying and doing interviews. I'll refine my application and keep applying. So here we see in the fixed mindset, you have some catastrophizing. One rejection means permanent failure, whereas the growth mindset is focused more on the need for learning and mastery, need for alignment and belonging, and also need for progress and perseverance. Conference abstract rejection. My research must not be good enough if they didn't accept my abstract. Or this conference had limited spots. Maybe my framing wasn't strong enough. I'll rework it and submit it somewhere else. Here again, we have the fixed mindset with the judgment of not good enough, whereas the growth mindset is focusing more on the need for competence and mastery. Harsh peer review rejection. These reviewers are just tearing me down. They don't understand my work at all. Or some comments are frustrating, but they also highlight areas where I can communicate my ideas better. So here with the fixed one, we have this we judge it as that the reviewers have a negative and destructive intent towards us, or that they are judge them as incapable of understanding. Whereas with the growth mindset, we focus more on the need for clarity and need for growth and effectiveness. Supervisor or PI criticism. Well, my PI thinks my work isn't good enough. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Or my PI is pushing me to improve. If I ask for more clarification and apply their feedback, I'll develop stronger skills. So here in the fixed one, it's more that saying that everything I do is just wrong, it's bad, and assuming that one person's opinion is the ultimate measure of your own growth. Whereas with the growth mindset, it's more about a need for growth, a need for competence, and also a need for support in things that we do. So with these examples, I will conclude this seminar, and thank you everyone for being here and listening.